Hello there, geniuses. How are y'all doing? Hope you're having a good day or night whenever you're watching this. This is a topic that I'm kind of looking forward to talking about. How INFJs predict the future, the intuition hack nobody knows. So, if you're new to MBTI, the 16 personalities, I'm not really the specialist on breaking down each of the 16 personalities and the function stacks and all of that. There's plenty of videos and creators you can find for that kind of info. The short explanation that I'll give you, especially for those who are new to the 16 personality types, is essentially every person on Earth fits into one of the 16 personality types, and they're named by four-letter acronyms. Mine is INFJ, and basically that breaks down to introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. And it kind of sounds harsh by that name or breakdown, but it's judging is not meaning in a negative way. It's not meaning good or bad, as a matter of fact. It has to do with cognitively how our brains have been wired, created by God, to basically assess different things and how we interact with the world. So I'm just going to leave it at that. If you want to dive into it more and figure out what your personality is, I'm going to include a link in this video for a free personality test that's going to give you your type. And it only takes about 15-20 minutes, maybe 30 at the most if you take your time, but it's a free test. You're not going to have to pay anything, and you're going to get a full explanation of your results immediately after. I did it back in, I think, 2015, and it was a very eye-opening moment for me, and actually very funny, because it's going to tell you things about yourself that you've never known how to explain to anybody, and nobody's told you that about yourself in such a clear manner. So unless something seems weird, and then you might want to take the test a second time just to make sure you got the right type. But anyhow, I'll leave it at that. As always, you guys can comment, ask questions if you have any. I've been researching the topic of 16 personalities and MBTI for, like I said, about the last 8 or 9 years. So I've learned a lot, but I don't specialize so much in breaking down the science of it and, like I said, the cognitive functions. I just focus more on sharing my own experience and why I believe it's so important and useful for us to know, regardless of what your passions, gifts, talents are in life, and regardless of your goals and everything. Because just having a better understanding of how you function, how your brain works, how you think, how you interact with the world, it could help absolutely everything. So, okay, so let's get into this. How INFJs predict the future. So, introverted intuition is basically one of the main things that INFJs have more than anybody else. Excuse me. And so it's why it's so rare and misunderstood how INFJs can seemingly predict the future, all while saying that I don't have a crystal ball, I'm not a prophet or anything like that. It's just literally our brain always working in the background. So how do INFJs always seem to know what's coming to some extent? That's what I'm going to do my best to break down and share my personal experiences and story a little bit at the same time. So the INFJ's intuition is truly our superpower. Pattern recognition, gut feelings, and holistic thinking are the three main items I'm going to use to explain this to you. First, pattern recognition. So it's connecting the dots in behavior, trends, or events. It's just pattern recognition. And it's not just the things that we see or are paying attention to, though. It's always working in the background. So if some of you are overthinkers who think a lot, you can kind of compare it to that, although it's basically a function that's happening in our brain constantly, whether we're thinking about it or not. So if I see something on the news, let's say, or on a post, and then I see that same person months later giving a speech and talking even just one sentence about something that I heard before, it's by pattern recognition, we mean that INFJ's brain is naturally connecting those patterns, meaning in the background, as if it were just a computer that was doing a calculation. So, what does that mean? It means we don't have to try very hard to connect a lot of patterns. And so that's just one instance, but we could have dozens of things like that happening in a day, or countless really. And that's kind of the funny side, is we don't even really know when it's happening or how it's happening. Sometimes, yes, we can point to something specific and say, oh yeah, I saw that a few months ago, and then I watched him talk about I don't know, the environment, and that those two things didn't go together. That doesn't make sense. So that person was obviously lying to one of those two groups of people, right? Something like that. So, and then from that, I have a certain character judgment, or a baseline, if you will, that I will use that point of reference to compare to everything else that person does. Again, that I connect the dot after that point. So you kind of see how powerful the pattern recognition is when it's not just something that you're skilled at or looking for, which a lot of people do nowadays, more than ever the last 4 years, but to have that function actually happening on its own in the background is just incredibly powerful as far as predicting future outcomes. So, okay, so pattern recognition, big one. Next, gut feelings. And this kind of ties in together the subconscious observations that create the hunches. So we do the pattern recognition first, and we're connecting all these things in the background, whether we want to or not. Sometimes I want to turn it off if I could. And then next is sort of these aha moments or hunches. And if enough time passes on a particular subject, like the last 4 years, 8 years, great example, when a certain, say, dot 117 comes into the picture, and my brain and my own paying attention has connected that many dots, there will get to a point where somebody will say something or I'll see something, and it's like, okay, I am 100% sure now that I'm right about this prediction, or at least the general direction of the way these things are going. Whereas before, I might have felt like 99% or 97% sure, but that's the hunch or the aha moment, the light bulb moment. And again, I've had many of those moments over the years. And those are the kinds of things that over time, as you get older, wiser, as an INFJ, but any personality, that you see a trend of things, what you're good at, figuring out those kinds of things, and you have more confidence and you trust your intuition and discernment more. And so that's also very powerful when you trust it more, because you just have more confidence to do things in life based on that info and not just what you're told. And then, so gut feelings, hunches, light bulb effect, that happens at some point. Holistic thinking, the last part of this INFJ superpower, seeing how small actions ripple through time. So holistic thinking, I'm thinking like just naturally the flow of the world or the flow of a certain culture. Like once we see a certain amount of things happen, this kind of goes along with the gut feeling, that we can predict that a certain amount of outcome is going to take place, such as if tons of people are questioning a certain thing with a medical instrument, right, that has to do with people's bodies, and we're looking at the doctors who are talking to us, we're looking at reactions to for years and years, right? So again, holistic thinking is we're seeing how these events are rippling into the future and what kind of accusations or uh, personal stories we've heard, different things, how that's going to ripple into the future. So again, it's not the crystal ball, it's not the prophetic word from God that he told us, yes, this is exactly what's going to happen. You need to tell the people, right? No, it's literally just naturally observing the environment, tied in with those gut feelings and the pattern recognition. And so this is all part of the same circle of the INFJ superpower, just working together at different times and ongoing. So I hope that kind of explains where this superpower comes from and how it functions. Because without you actually having it, having that gift yourself, it's like I said, it's very hard to describe to somebody, even when there's a perfect example. And I have essentially predicted exact events years in advance. But I'm also